Right, people, Victory and Vices podcast. We back again for the second time this week. Me, Rory Spooner, and Reese Henley is back with me, and we've got all the news and views on the other transfer stuff. So you may have seen the video me and Becky did the other day. That was predominantly Manchester United and their sort of busy deadline day. And me and Reese are rounding up the best of the rest that happened on deadline day and some of the transfer news that came in today as well. So we will start with Aston Villa. Now, Aston Villa have been a big topic on this podcast over the past few weeks. We've talked about Ollie Watkins. We've talked about Bertrand Traore. Aston Villa fans, big shout out to you. I know some of you have messaged me and you subscribed. You've liked the videos. You've really interacted with us in the comments. Apologies, YouTube held some of the comments. So I did miss a few of them, but I will get back in touch with you. But I made sure it allows the comments on this one. So Ross Barkley, okay, Reese, we'll kick off with that because it's an interesting transfer. I've always liked Ross Barkley as a player. To me, it sounds a strange parallel maybe to some people, but a young Ross Barkley, I saw parallels of a Michael Ballack in terms of the way they broke from midfield and played. And I always thought Ross Barkley had massive potential. He seems to have leveled out a little bit now. What he's gone at Chelsea was kind of like a small fish in a big pond. And now at Aston Villa, he's the big fish in a small pond. And I don't say that to be disrespectful to Aston Villa either. But I think that suits him better. The responsibility of being the main man in a team, being a facilitator. Him and Grealish together looked superb the other day as well. If you can get, Grealish firing, Barkley, Ollie Watkins again, Trezeguet, Traore. Aston Villa, we talked the other video, maybe a 15th place finish would be decent. I mean, look, you throw Ross Barkley in the mix there, you might sneak a top 10 on a good season. What do you reckon?
We know that Villa are aiming for top 6, which is, a touch ambitious. I'm a fan of Ross Barkley as well. He's actually single-handedly responsible for the shortest football match I've ever attended. I was actually half an hour late to a Newcastle match a few years ago when he was playing at Everton. And I walked into the football stadium. I walked up the steps at 3-0. And after half an hour, and as I stepped onto the top step, I watched Ross Barkley pick it up in his own half, dribble past about 6 Newcastle players and score, at which point I then turned around and walked out. So I had about a 1-minute football match, and all I got to see was Ross Barkley on the ball, and I'd seen enough. But he is a tremendous football player. I mean, he's had struggles at Chelsea. I think Chelsea fans didn't warm to him, and I think if I was to say I was a big fan, he's tremendously talented. I think we might catch a bit of flack for that, just the way he's been over the last few years. But I think if you look at Chelsea, there's so many players who have suffered because of going to Chelsea. I mean, historically, you could look at Sean Wright-Phillips. More recently, you could look at Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who's also either gone for a move now or is linked away.
Yeah, he's with Fulham now, yeah.
He's with Fulham, yeah. And so there's been quite a few that have suffered. And so, yeah, he did need a new club. And perhaps Aston Villa is a good club for him to have gone to. He was superb on the weekend, as was Grealish. I mean, you could raise massive, massive question marks around the Liverpool defending. I've said for a while, Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't the defender's cousin. He really, really is poor defensively. He's world class going forward. We'll all agree. I'm not going to go against pundits and experts in that sense. But I mean, his defending needs to be developed, and he's young. He can improve. I think we actually said to Chris when he was on the podcast, he compared him to Cafu, and I said, well, he's got a long way to go defensively until he starts all those kind of comparisons. But yeah, he was showing up on the weekend. Virgil van Dijk was the only guy there who looked anywhere near competent, and even he had a bad game. So I don't think that result, the 7-2 result, is representative of what Villa will be able to do week in, week out. But certainly Grealish and Barkley against the smaller teams will be able to represent a decent attacking force. And also, Ollie Watkins looked incredibly sharp as well. So loads to be excited about if you're a Villa fan. I would question, though, I don't know how Dean Smith is planning to work it out tactically, especially in games, against the bigger clubs, and perhaps in games against your Burnleys and your tougher opponents to break down. Obviously, we've seen he's willing to do it against Liverpool, so we'd assume that's what he's going to do week in, week out. I would question the balance of that side. If you're playing Grealish and Barkley in the same midfield 3, then I would say that's quite an imbalanced midfield between attacking and defensive players, so which might leave them vulnerable in what is quite a shambolically weak defence from Villa, despite the start that they've had, which is great. But certainly reason to be excited for Villa fans, for sure.
Do you know what? Again, I'll make a comparison. And it's not necessarily an accurate parallel, right? But if you were going to play with Barkley and Grealish in a midfield three, and you had a decent defensive midfielder alongside them. So, I was about to say McGinn. Yeah, I was about to say McGinn. I don't see why that can't work. Because you look at Man City, and again, it's not necessarily an accurate comparison, but they would often play with, a defensive midfielder, and they'd have De Bruyne and David Silva, or they'd have David Silva and Bernardo Silva in the middle of the park. So it can work. I mean, if you were to play Ross Barkley as a traditional sort of 8 in a midfield 3, and then you have Grealish maybe a little bit further forward, maybe wide left of a front 3, or maybe even wide right of a front 3. I think there is room to accommodate them both. You might maybe lose a little bit of industry, I suppose, if you put them both in a midfield 3. I get where you're coming from to a degree. I mean, in certain games, it might expose them a little bit. But, I mean, when you're playing at home and you want to try and break down the team, I think it would be great. It'd be great for fans as well to watch that, to have them both in there. I think Aston Villa fans, like I said previously, they're a realistic bunch. And they seem like a really nice bunch as well. They interacted with us in the comments. They really went for you after the Ollie Watkins situation. They did not appreciate that at all. But yeah, they seem very realistic. They were like, you know what? Yeah, we think, coming 15th, 14th, that would be great. I think Barkley can push them on. But what do you reckon? Safety for them? Yeah, I don't see any problems there.
Well, I mean, first of all, you call them a realistic bunch, but I would call them far from that, if I'm honest. I think it all starts from the top at Aston Villa. Their owner is ambitious, and there's nothing wrong with ambition. But he says he wants top 6 within 3 years, and that's simply not going to happen. Not without a monumental amount of investment, and I can't see that happening at Aston Villa. And even with a monumental amount of investment, breaking the top 6 in such a small amount of time is still a tough ask. And Aston Villa fans buy into that. And I think that could be a concern if Dean Smith does a good job this year and pulls them into 16th place and survives. In my book, that's a successful season. But there are so many Villa fans out there who want to push the top 10 already. They've beaten Liverpool 7-2. It was a brilliant team performance. Liverpool were poor, but it was a brilliant team performance, taking nothing away from them. But they're not going to do that week in, week out. They've had a good start to the season, but they will struggle. They will struggle this season. They're not going to finish 6th. They're unlikely to finish in the top 10. Of course, occasionally teams do break that top 10. But for me, their defence is so frail. When they come up against decent teams, they're going to get found out.
Well, time will reveal all. Obviously, Aston Villa fans, let us know your opinion as well. I'm sure you'll all love to hear Reese's comments again after the Ollie Watkins video. So, yeah, Aston Villa fans, let us know in the comments below what you think. Obviously, we appreciate the time you take to get in touch with us, good and bad, because we're always receptive to a bit of chat. So, yeah, that's Aston Villa, Ross Barkley. I like to sign him. Reese does too. Moving on to Everton, Ben Godfrey. Now, very interesting signing Ben Godfrey because he's a player with a lot of potential. When you look at that Norwich team that went down, obviously, you have a back line of Max Aarons that's being linked with Bayern Munich and Barcelona. You've got Jamal Lewis, who was almost on his way to Liverpool and ended up at Newcastle. And now you've got Godfrey that went to Everton. So maybe the back line at Norwich is because they were quite inexperienced. And altogether as a unit, they struggled. But you have 3 very talented boys there. And you could argue that Godfrey is potentially the most talented. He is a very, very good young defender. Reading reports from The Athletic, I know Manchester United were watching Godfrey. They decided against making a move for him. I think they felt it was probably a little too soon. But a lot of big clubs acknowledge his potential. And me and Becky have mentioned it previously on different podcasts, and you'll probably be on there, Reese, as well. We always talk about a player needing a stepping stone. So for a player, before you can really fulfill your potential at a big club, take that stepping stone first and progress, because A, that stepping stone is going to be beneficial, there's less pressure, and B, you grow alongside that stepping stone. So they may actually develop into a far bigger club than you anticipated when you joined them. And I look at Godfrey and I think whoever advised him on that Everton move was very, very smart, because going forward now, they look real slick. And at the back, I don't think he'd displace Yerry Mina, but I do think he could displace Michael Keane. Michael Keane never really went on to be the player that I thought he would be. He's a solid Premier League player, but Godfrey's got a bit of potential. So if you said to me long term, who would he take out to that side? I'd back it to be Michael Keane.
Okay, so obviously it's a great move for Ben Godfrey. You know, any player who makes the move from a championship side to a team challenging the top 6 in the Premier League, that's a brilliant move for them. Is he going to start? Who knows? In my opinion, no. He's a 22-year-old lad. He's got a lot of potential to improve. It's not a massive transfer fee when you consider it's roughly the same amount they paid for Rodriguez, Doucouré and Allen, essentially. So it's not huge. And like you said, it is a good move for him and good, and you know, well done to the agent who's managed to get him that move, because I don't think he particularly deserved it. He had the chance last year to step up into the Norwich team when they got promoted, and he was part of a defence that was shambolic all the way through. And for me, he wasn't exactly a shining light in there either, because they were just leaking goals and they were lacking leaders, and he just none of them seemed to offer much. They seemed to be individual players that couldn't really form a back line.
Yeah.
Also, you know, you have to question the England team. You look at England's defenders. They have Joe Gomez, who's not a great defender. They've got John Stones, who's shambolic at times. Harry Maguire, again, idiotic at times and shambolic how bad he can be on the pitch. You know, you can name a few other central defenders that don't get into the England squad who aren't good defenders. So that's the benchmark to get into the England squad. And Ben Godfrey's not even in the conversation. And that's who he's trying to measure up against. So should Everton have maybe dipped into, you know, I'm not sure, but I don't think he starts for me. But one thing is for sure is that under Carlo Ancelotti, you know, with the background that he's got and the defensive coaching ability that he's got, he could be anything at this stage. He just needs to be able to learn from people like Seamus Coleman, who's a good defensively, Yerry Mina, who's extremely good in the air. So, and obviously, if he can put his foot on the ball as well, that's going to be the way Ancelotti wants to play out. So definitely a lot of potential. I just don't necessarily see him slotting straight in and being the answer, especially for an Everton team. If in 2 weeks' time, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but in 2 weeks' time, we could be sitting here, Everton could have beaten Liverpool, and we could be talking about the potential of them winning the league. Are they going to win that league with?
I mean, look, I think they're a long way from that. But you're right in what they're saying. What they have bought is potential, and with Ben Godfrey, okay, you don't necessarily know how he's going to develop, but you know he's got the raw attributes of something. And with the right management and the right opportunities, he could go on to be something. So again, I'm not mad at the signing. Like I said, that Norwich backline were a young backline. They were very, very inexperienced to play at the top level. And you are right, they were very individual at times. But the three individuals and their potential that we mentioned there, they've a lot of potential. So with the right managers around them, there's no reason as the years go on they can't accommodate a bit more experience in the game. And tactically, I suppose, be a bit more aware. But again, I'm not mad at Godfrey signing. I think he's a decent little addition. Everton fans, obviously, you're key in this. Let us know your opinions on it. We want to know if you think he's a good signing or not. Would you have gone for Godfrey or would you have pushed further for Tomori? Let us know. So, interesting. Everton, that's a decent signing for them. The big one, I mean, look, we can't not talk about this because when we put this video out last time, where we were just amazed by the numbers for the Thomas Partey video we did previously. So hopefully it does those numbers again. But this is a really interesting one, Reece, because Thomas Partey to Arsenal. Now, a lot of people, a lot of journalists and a lot of sort of fans in Spain are talking about how Arsenal maybe kind of did Atletico dirty. They never really mentioned they wanted to sign him. They kind of never really pushed to sign him. But on deadline day, then they went in and paid the release clause, which didn't leave Atletico any real time to replace him. Now, we can come on to that in a moment. But initially, your thoughts on the signing. What do you think he'll bring to that Arsenal side?
Well, first of all, about the actual signing itself, I think it is everything that could be right about a transfer. Every single part of it was done in the most ideal way. I think Arsenal fans, especially, would be so happy with it and the way it was done. You know, Arteta is clearly a fan of Thomas Partey, and rightly so. He's given his name to the board, as a target. And they've worked all summer to try and free up the funds. I know Arsenal have had problems making redundancies and things like that, and being able to
rest in peace to Gunnersaurus as well, by the way.
He left in order to free up that 40 grand a year extra to pay Partey. But he's given the targets to the board. The board have said, right, okay, we'll give it a go, and that's been happening behind the scenes all summer. Atletico have obviously put that release clause, and La Liga are involved as well. So there's that release clause. It's clear to see what that player costs. And Arteta was asked on the weekend. He said he was asked, what's going to happen with Partey. He said, look, the board knows what I want, and I'm sure we're all a family here. I'm sure if it's possible, then we will do it. And if it's not possible, we won't. And it sounded to me that they were all very harmonious. They were all on the right page, And ultimately, they've got the funds together. They knew what they needed to buy in order to buy the player. They've gone out and bought him, and that's all happened really quickly on the day. And there was no problems there, and there's no animosity felt, by either party on that one. Onto the player himself, I think we spoke in the pod before about what Arsenal need.
Yeah,
I mean, you look at the defence, and they are short. But the way the season started, they're all buying into Arteta's philosophy. They're all playing really good football, but they have lacked a little in midfield. Ceballos has been good, but he hasn't really started. Then you've got Xhaka and El Neni, who are lacking quality. Guendouzi's, gone out back to France, and that leaves a hole in your midfield for, your world-class player in order to elevate you to that top four, which is where they want to go, essentially. And Partey is that guy. For me, he's incredibly strong. He's a direct and powerful runner. He's a very technical player. His passing range is excellent. He represents his country at an international level and is the poster boy for that team. So he knows how to wear that sort of responsibility. He's played in an Atletico side, which is extremely compact and well-drilled and disciplined, which is something that Arsenal are crying out for. And like I said, he can bring so much to that Arsenal team in terms of leaders and experience, top-level experience. I think this one is... It will be, in my opinion, it will go down by the end of the season as maybe one of the signings of the summer. Maybe that or Rodriguez.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm with you. Yeah, him or James would be potentially the signing to the of the season. Thomas Partey, just to begin with, right? Mikel Arteta has done what Arsene Wenger couldn't do, and he's done what Unai Emery couldn't do, and that is you identify a weakness in the spine of the team, and you then go, okay, right, how can we improve upon this weakness? Because they went and bought Gabriel, right? And while he might not be the world-class defender everyone thinks he is yet, he's been pretty solid thus far. And he, again, like you said, he's bought into what Arteta wants. And Partey comes in and he adds to the spine of that team again. And he is a world-class defensive midfield player. Understand that there are players out there, right, that you call world-class that don't touch Thomas Partey in that area. He is a really, really talented boy. And in that midfield, he is going to give them something they've been missing for a long time. And the spine of that Arsenal side is what they need to continue to build upon. So if I'm Arsenal next summer, or even in January, probably not so much January, but I think next summer will be quite definitive for them again. If you're going to back Arteta, the two players now I looked at for Arsenal, because I'm going to do some transfer stuff coming up ready for the January window, I would be looking at, again, Aouar at Lyon. I think he would be an excellent midfield partner for Thomas Partey. And Upamecano. So if you put Upamecano in an Arsenal back three or back two, he had some depth. Him, Saliba, Gabriel. I think Arsenal now moving forward, they need to aim for those type of players. Once you buy a Thomas Partey, that's the level you want to be at now. So all the players need to be at his level or someone approaching his level. I think he's a great signing, like you said. I know Atletico were a bit pissed, right, about the the release clause. But there's no friends in business. It's tough. It is what it is. Arsenal have to do what's best for them. I'm sure Atletico would probably do the same if they were in the same position. So, yeah, I think it's a great signing. I mean, going back to obviously what Arsenal need, what do you reckon about Aouar and Partey together? Would you get Aouar next summer if he became available? Would you break the bank for him?
It's always tough. I think, for the record, that if Arsenal were given the choice in this transfer market, Aouar or Partey, I think there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that the correct decision was made in signing Thomas Partey.
Yeah.
The answer to a problem of a lack of spine in the team and lack of discipline in midfield and all the rest of the problems that they've got is not to sign a prospect. You need to sign a ready-made quality. Now, we know Hassam Aouar has been decent for Lyon. He's been decent in the French under-21 team over the last couple of years. But is he ready for the Premier League? Is he ready for a team that wants to get into the top four?
Yeah, I think he is. If you look at his...
And one thing as well you have to take into account is, for a player that is young, playing for Lyon and has only played a certain way at one club, Arsenal play 5 at the back, or at least they like to.
Yeah.
How does Aouar fit into that midfield, a two-man midfield with Thomas Partey? I'm not sure. So it is the correct decision for me. Sign the disciplined midfielder.
Yeah.
Shore up your team and then work from there.
Yeah, it's a hell of a signing though. Like, it really is. When that came through on deadline day, I was like, oh, okay, right. So, wow, this is actually happening then, because our last transfer video for Thomas Partey just went off. The numbers that it was doing, it was just insane. So Arsenal fans, I already know what you're going to say, but get in the comments below. Let us know about Thomas Partey, how you feel about him. In terms of your upcoming signings, obviously pick 2 or 3 signings you'd like to come in and join as well. I think Upamecano and Aouar would be great additions as well. So yeah, Thomas Partey, a hell of a signing, and a great way for Arsenal fans to end the summer window. Moving on to an ex-Arsenal legend. So, well, somebody say he is, somebody say he isn't. Mr. Theo Walcott.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Gunnersaurus.
Oh, no, Gunnersaurus. No. He's at the job centre right now, claiming job seekers. So.
No, Mesut Ozil's got his back.
You reckon?
You want, listen, let's have a chat about this. Gunnersaurus leaves. Mesut Ozil posts on Twitter that they're going to bring Gunnersaurus back to the club because Mesut Ozil is going to pay his salary.
He's going to play as Gunnersaurus. That's what I thought you were going to say.
He's got to do something. But he's going to pay his salary, which, by the way, is 40 grand for a mascot. Which is, well, certainly not a match.
I'm just checking, that's all. I'm just checking.
But 40 grand a year for a mascot, by the way, I don't think you'd have too many people, to turning that job down. But Ozil is obviously going to pay his wages. And he added it at the end, as long as I am at Arsenal, which is the most obscure way a player has ever asked for a new contract.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Is it disingenuous? Is it genuine? I think there's a bit of both in there.
I think Mesut Ozil is born to assist, and he hasn't assisted anyone in such a long time. He saw Gunnersaurus with the open goal, and he thought, let me slide a pass into this guy. And shout out to Mesut Ozil, right? Because I didn't see any other Arsenal players do it, right? Bear in mind, there's a lot of other Arsenal players on very big money. There's a lot of other ex-Arsenal players that are on decent money as well. So they could have all potentially chipped in to give Gunnersaurus, a couple of grand. But yeah, no, shout out to him. I know it's loose change to Mesut Ozil, right? And Gunnersaurus, if we are waiting for Mesut Ozil to leave, I mean, Gunnersaurus, realistically, he might only be employed until January, right? If Mesut Ozil is gone. But shout out to Gunnersaurus.
It might be like a Sam Allardyce and Sammy Lee situation. Whereas if Mesut Ozil gets a transfer to, I don't know, a Valencia or something like that, then he just takes Gunnersaurus with him on the plane.
Why not?
Go together wherever he goes.
Who needs Ant and Dec when you've got Mesut Ozil and Gunnersaurus? They're the original dream team. But yeah, shout out to Mesut Ozil though. That's it's a nice gesture, especially during a difficult time. Look, we'll end it like this, right? We'll end it like this. Gunnersaurus walked, so Thomas Partey could run, right? So we'll end it like that. So shout out to them. Back to Walcott though at Southampton, right? So Theo Walcott. Now, Again, I never felt like he truly fitted in at Everton. And I get that impression, ironically, with Alex Iwobi as well. I feel like the moves, they've kind of gone there just because they had to go there. I don't feel like they maybe even really wanted to be there. But Walcott going back to Southampton, it feels like the cipher is kind of complete. Theo Walcott going back, not home as such, but back to where it all started. And I think, again, it's not a bad option for Southampton. I mean, realistically, he gives them something different. He's got a lot of big game experience. What I would say about Theo Walcott is, if you can manage his fitness, and I say that about a lot of players, right? If you can manage Theo Walcott's fitness and get him to play a full season, 38 games, well, not full season, 38 games, but as close to 38 games as you can get, he's a 1 in 4 striker. So if you're asking Theo Walcott, look, score us 10 goals, keep us safe, and maybe push us up the table, I don't see why he can't do that.
Well, I mean, when was the last time he got a season where he scored 10 goals? I mean, the problem is, at Southampton, they have such a dull team. I mean, I don't mean to insult Southampton fans, but their team is just such a boring team. You know, they're where Newcastle were 3-4 years ago. Their players, they don't have much about them. They have Danny Ings up front, and let's be honest, if he was to leave, then they'd be
they'd acknowledge that though as well, I think, in fairness.
But then they have a very, very average defence. I think they've got the Bednarek is probably their best defender. They've brought in loan signings at fullback. Their midfield is made of, Højbjerg left for Spurs, so then he was probably their best player who's left, and he wasn't even that good. So lots of average players coming together in a team that's probably going to be staying up or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And yet they sign a person in Theo Walcott who probably slots into right midfield, where their only other exciting player is, and that's Redmond. And what you'd say about both is they were both touted to be exceptional talents when they were young and never really recognised it, and don't look like they're ever going to be able to recognise that talent. So for me, it's a very romantic signing. It's like on a scaled down version of what Bale going back to Tottenham is. And I know that Southampton fans are made up with the signing. So it's gone down really well because, he left them when they were 16. They never got a chance to experience his talent.
Mm.
And obviously the money that they got for him was able to catapult them back up through the leagues eventually. So they are going to be a fan of the signing, but I can't, for the life of me, I just cannot see him doing anything this season.
Interesting you should say that. I mean, looking through this team, just for example, now the Southampton side, you've got Romeu, Walker-Peters, Ings, Ward-Prowse is a player I really like. Bertrand's not a bad little left back. Redmond, Long, throw Walcott in there. There seems to be enough there that could, to keep them up. I wouldn't necessarily know. I don't know if I call them boring. I mean, they wouldn't be the first team I would watch, right? But at the same time, they've got a little bit about them. If they get going and they get into fifth gear, you think, okay, right, they could, give a few teams a couple of problems. With Theo Walcott, interesting question for you, right? Do you ever think he fulfilled his potential?
Well, I think when he went to Arsenal, it took him a couple of years to get going. And with Theo Walcott, I remember there was a part of his career where Arsenal were without a striker. I think it was around the time that they sold Robin van Persie. And they played him as a central striker for about a year. And yeah, he had his problems with injuries, but when he was a central striker, he did well.
Yeah.
But, you'd have to say that over the last 2-3 seasons, he's played, nearly 100 games, maybe 75 games, something like that. He scored 10 goals, which is not a good return for a player who's been playing for a club like Everton. This is not a team that's fighting relegation and scores 1 goal every 2 matches. This is a team that you spent £50 million on Sigurdsson and spent, £50 million on Richarlison and all these other players who came in and he wasn't able to hit the target. So when he had a season or two at striker, yes, he started to look like he was fulfilling that potential. But in football, you need to prolong it for anyone to sort of see you as that, good, solid Premier League player. And you need to prolong it for a few seasons. He wasn't able to do that. And fitness aside, I just don't think he ever had the ability. If he didn't have a yard of pace, he frankly wouldn't be a Premier League footballer.
Yeah, interesting you should say that. I'm going to make a bold statement. I think he overachieved. I do. I think you're right. I think technically he was very limited. He was a decent finisher when you put him into certain positions. And I think with Walcott, there was a point where he was red hot for Arsenal, and he scored a lot of goals, right? Look, no one can take away the fact that he is, when you look at the all-time top goal scorers for Arsenal, he's not right at the top, but he's somewhere in the mix. So, in that respect, he did well. But I always thought that because he was young and he was English, and we always talk about English taxes on players and them being overhyped, I do think that Theo Walcott was a little bit overhyped. And I think his game at times was quite one-dimensional. It was all about that yard of pace that he had on people. And, he scored a lot of goals, but he missed a lot of sitters as well. So I go as far as to say that Theo Walcott probably overachieved in a lot of cases. I'm not mad at that. I always want people to fulfill their potential no matter who they are. One thing I can't stand is wasted potential. So going back to him signing for Southampton, does he have a little bit left in the tank to give? That's up to Theo Walcott.
I think they've sold Buffal, what you'd have to say about Southampton is that their business has been so poor over the last few years. Their recruitment has been famously so good. And then over the last few years, it's just gone off the boil, something rotten. To the extent that in one day, on deadline day, they sold their two most expensive ever players. Their two record signings, they sold them on the same day. And they made a loss on both of them. But Buffal, I thought, had something to give to the team. And I don't understand why they've sold Buffal and brought in Walcott, one of which, either him or Redmond, is going to have to play out of position. So I don't really understand it. But I do rate Ralph Hasenhüttl. And I think the job he's doing down at Southampton is great. So I'm sure that Southampton will be fine. And I'm sure he will get a tune out of Theo Walcott. But I don't think Southampton fans can expect any sort of world beater there.
Yeah, that's a fair shot. I mean, again, I assume they're probably quite realistic in their approach. I mean, look, they know they're not going to pull up too many trees, but if you offer them safety and the chance to go again and, a chance next season, hopefully with some fans back in the, the stadium, they'll probably take it. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so this next part is not about a transfer. It's about a potential transfer. We don't really cover a lot of Scottish football too much, usually because there's not much going on. But yeah, with Scottish football, the big transfer news is Jack Wilshere potentially to Rangers. Now, when I first watched Jack Wilshere play, I can vividly remember sitting down in my mother's living room and I was watching the Emirates Cup. And Jack Wilshere came on against Real Madrid. And he came on and he was absolutely electric. When I say he was electric, I mean, he's like a little midget running around the pitch, right? But he had this low central gravity. And every time he picked up the ball, he just touched it with his sweet left foot. And he was passing and moving. And he was just terrorizing Real Madrid. And at that moment, I remember thinking, wow, what a player. And as time went on, I'm not an Arsenal fan, by the way. I'm a United fan. But I watched Jack Wilshere and I just admired him. And I just remember thinking, wow, what a football player. And I know Guardiola made the whole statement where he's like, Jack Wilshere, there's a million of them in Spanish academies. And there probably is, right? But there's not too many Jack Wilsheres on these British Isles. He is a supremely talented boy. Now, the problem Jack Wilshere has is, and I'm going to say this, and it's a bold statement, it's the same problem Phil Jones has. Phil Jones on his day is a very capable defender, right? But Phil Jones cannot stay fit. And the reason Phil Jones can't stay fit is because he was born with football and ability, but he wasn't born with a body to play at the top level. You look at a Sergio Ramos or Cristiano Ronaldo, they have a combination of the two. They have a footballing brain and a footballing body. They're built to be at the top level and they're built to last. And when you look at certain English players, maybe it's the demands of the game, but you look, Phil Jones now is really on the outers at Manchester United. Daniel Sturridge is without a club. Jack Wilshere is without a club. And, the demands are quite high. So go into the Scottish League where, okay, there's an intensity, right? It's a physical league. It's not the most technically gifted league in the world, but it is quite physical. I think somebody like a Jack Wilshere could thrive at Rangers. And I think under Steven Gerrard, someone who will want to, get the best out of him, I think it would be a perfect move for him. What do you reckon, Reece?
Well, look, you mentioned that England doesn't have too many Jack Wilsheres. Well, a place that has even fewer Jack Wilsheres is Scotland. Let's not pretend here. Let's not pretend for a moment that Jack Wilshere is going to Rangers because he wants to win Champions Leagues or he wants to win titles and things like that.
Titles maybe.
You don't come back from the Scottish League. You don't. You might have used to back in the day, but now the standard of football in Scotland is extremely poor, and it's so poor that you having a great season in the Scottish League proves absolutely nothing at top level. That being said, what Jack Wilshere can do now, I mean, we're assuming that this move isn't, just for the love of the game and what have you. I'll come on to that in a second. But what he can do is, if he can stay fit for a season and establish himself as the main player in that Rangers side, and he can stay fit for maybe 2 seasons and show the world, actually, I have got a body, then, that opens up foreign moves for him. That opens up mid-level Premier League moves for him.
Yeah.
When the time does come around and agents do want to play those games, he actually has a leg to stand on, if you're pardon the pun. Now, obviously, I understand. He's played with Gerrard at England. He obviously knows Steven Gerrard, and Rangers do have some good players. But let's be frank here. Rangers fans will agree. Even Jack Wilshere with one leg, Rangers have Alfredo Morelos, Yanis Hagi, Kemal Roof, Brian Kent, Jermaine Defoe, these good players. But let's not pretend for a moment that Jack Wilshere is not, with one leg, is not the best player in that team, or the league, for that matter. So for Rangers, if they can manage to get Jack Wilshere, I mean, I don't know how they're paying his wages. They might have to go back into Division 4 to do so. But if they can manage to get him, then it all works out. Then that's a massive signing. That's a massive signing. And Steven Gerrard is doing a great job, trying to push Celtic now. And Celtic are there for the taking. They don't, they're not brilliant anymore. They're going for 10 in a row. There's big pressure on Gerrard to be able to deliver this season. And Neil Lennon is an incredibly poor manager at Celtic. So there is the opportunity this season for Rangers to be able to stop that right at the death. Because I know that up in Glasgow, the 10 in a row is all anyone talks about. It's huge. So it is, shit or bust for Rangers this year. So it will be massive. Jack Wilshere, he has nothing to lose and everything to gain, because no one here thinks of him as particularly a world-class player or anything like that. No one thinks that he can even last 90 minutes on a football pitch. So he's got nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, it's an interesting move. Like you said, it could be a launch pad to something maybe a bit better without being disrespectful to Rangers. Like, I know before he made the West Ham move, and the West Ham move, I always felt like it was very sentimental for him because he was a West Ham fan growing up. Whereas I think he was linked with AC Milan, and I just remember thinking, Jack, take that AC Milan move, really go play for another prestigious club and show him what you're made of. And that league would have probably suited him better, because Serie A realistically is full of very technically gifted players. Obviously defensively can be a little rough at times, but the pace of the game I think would have suited him better. So if he uses Rangers as a launch pad for something different, fair enough. If he stays there and he's happy, fair enough. He may not even go there. It's all hypothetical right now. But if I'm Jack Wilshere's agent, I'm pushing him towards that move. I'm like, look, you're going to have to take maybe a little bit of a pay cut, because ultimately you can't, you're not going to be able to command this type of salary you were commanding before. Some clubs may even look at him, without sounding disrespectful, and say, you can get a pay as you, we'll pay you as you play, or play as you, I don't know what they call it, pay as you pay or pay as you play. But one of those types of deals where basically you're only giving him money if he's on the pitch, because you can't fork out a contract for Jack Wilshere and then he's out for 8 months and you're pushing him around Ibrox in a wheelchair. Like, that ain't going to happen, do you know what I mean? That's not going to go down like that. But Rangers fans, again, let us know your opinion. Jack Wilshere, yay or nay? Do you want him in the side? Do you not want him in the side? Is he a good signing? Is he a bad signing? Let us know. But in terms of the transfer roundup, I think that's pretty much it from me. Reese, you got anything else you want to bring up?
There is one, and I would love to know what you think of this one. And I think as a South Wales podcast, it will be remiss of us.
I think I know where you're going with this. Okay.
And that is Joe Rodon to Tottenham.
Yeah.
Now, that is heavily linked, and they're talking about transfer fees of potentially up to £20 million.
Yeah.
And EFL clubs can still trade with the Premier League. So it can still happen. And I would be interested to see if that would happen. What would be your opinion on that if Spurs could get that over the line?
That's a good question. I like Joe Rodon. I do. I think he's I'd love to get him on this podcast. So if anybody that's watching this knows him, put him in touch. We're Swansea boys. Well, Reece slightly further down the bridge, but he can come on and talk to us about the move, and we can get the exclusive. So if he's listening, feel free to get in touch. Going back to the move itself, it's hard, right? Because being that I am from Swansea, a lot of my allegiances lie with this city, and I want the city to do well. And one of the ways the city thrives is when the football team is thriving. When Swans first came into the Premier League, the city was buzzing. Like, it was absolutely buzzing. Every single game, people were excited. There's the mood around the city instantly lifted. And in order to recapture that feeling, we need players like him to stay. But the problem is, I don't think he will. I think the lure of going to Tottenham and Mourinho, and the wage as well, is too big. The talk, actually, ironically, because I mentioned this to someone the other day. I mentioned it to one of the lads I know who's a big Swans fan, and he was like, "Nah, it won't be Spurs, it'll be West Ham." I think he'd be foolish to take the West Ham gig. I don't think West Ham are really going anywhere, to be honest with you. If you look at that Spurs team now with Gareth Bale and Son and Kane and Lo Celso starting to pick up a bit of form, and Ndombele's looking good, Joe Rodon slotting into the back. I think obviously it'll be a back five. Maybe even alongside Ben Davis in a back five in that back three. I think it'd be an excellent move for him. Are Swansea getting shortchanged, Reece? That's the question I would ask you.
No, absolutely not. I mean, there are several ways of looking at this transfer. Looking objectively and from a Spurs point of view, then they will be getting a player who's got enormous potential. He's not a finished article, and he will need help to get there. When you buy a young player, I mean, to get them between 15 and 20 million, which is the current negotiation sticking block, is the transfer fee. I know Swansea are holding out for all they can get, which is rightfully so. But around that number is not a bad amount to pay for a young defender with what I would say is bags of potential. I've watched him a few times, and he is a solid player, a surprisingly solid player for his age. But he does need the help. So, from a Spurs point of view, it's a cheap one. I'm not sure that he will go into the starting 11, but they do need cover in that area. Looking at it from my own personal point of view, I'm extremely concerned. Like I said, if he goes in to the starting 11, then it's fantastic news. Obviously, I don't want to see Swansea suffer. They're my local team as much as they are yours, and I really want them to do well. I hope that they would invest the £20 million wisely, which I don't think they would, based on previous evidence. Yeah. And they're looking like a team that's finally starting to get it together in the Championship. They're finally starting to put a team together that knows each other, wants to play with each other, understands the style of football. They're a young nucleus of players that are starting to grow up together, which is good from the Swans' point of view. And I would be concerned that taking Joe Rodon, who is an integral part of that team, out of the team would have a huge negative impact on the squad. That being said, putting my Wales hat on, if Joe Rodon was to go to the Spurs team and play in that starting 11, that's great news. Because Spurs are going places. He'll be playing with experienced centre-halves who can positively affect his game. He'll be playing with Hugo Lloris, who's a hugely experienced World Cup winning goalkeeper who can help him with, playing out for the back and playing together in that system. He'll be playing with, international players in the midfield he'll be able to link up with. And crucially, playing against Premier League players, which is obviously good, and playing for Jose Mourinho, arguably the best defensive coach in the world, other than maybe Diego Simeone. So it would be hugely beneficial for his game if he plays. On the flip side of that argument, if he is not in Mourinho's plans for a starting spot in the next couple of years, then from a Welsh point of view, that is awful news, because that would mean that one half of Wales' defensive line will be on Spurs' bench, in that Joe Rodon and Ben Davies will both be on the bench, which is dreadful news from the international perspective. I think he is good. Is he good enough for Spurs? It pains me to say no, because he could be, and we don't know for sure. But for me, it's not the right signing at the right time.
I'll kind of go against the grain with that. I think he is the right signing. He fits the profile of what Spurs want. Spurs want young, hungry players now to come into that side and add to that side. You know, you look at a Reguilon coming in. I know Reguilon is obviously more of a short-term signing because you'll probably end up back in Madrid. But Joe Rodon going there, look, you've got to back yourself. You only get one life, and you've got to make your next move your best move. So if you're going to Spurs, be of the mentality that Eric Dyer, I want your spot. Do you know what I mean? Davinson Sanchez, I want your spot. Don't go there just to be a backup player. Go there, have a belief in yourself and be like, you know what? I'm as good as all of you. In fact, I'm better than you, and I'm going to show it. And if you go in and you work hard every day and you get your head down, you don't do anything stupid, and you listen to, especially listening to what Mourinho wants. That's where a lot of players struggle. You know, your Martials, your Shaws, your Pogbas. That's where they all fall out. They don't listen to him. If you listen to what Mourinho wants and you just follow his instructions to a T, you will be perfectly okay. So, yeah, Joe Rodon, I'm going to say, yeah, take that move if it comes through. Why not? You know, ultimately, if you get a 4-year contract with Spurs and after 2 years you're not happy, you can all just move on anyway.
Let me play devil's advocate. Matt Smith, central midfield, Man City.
Yeah.
Ethan Ampadu, centre half, defensive midfield, Chelsea. Both have had successful loan spells. Ampadu, I would say, has had a better loan spell out in RB Leipzig and had a good season with them. Matt Smith has had successful loan spells with Twente and Charlton. And both, I would like, especially Ethan Ampadu, wanted to challenge for their spots, and they're good eggs, and they're doing all the right things, but they're just getting overlooked by the big teams. My concern would be if Joe Rodon would also fall into that category, and it can happen so easily to someone who's not English.
Yeah, no, that's true. And you look at, obviously, we talked about a Ben Godfrey. You know, Ben Godfrey is flavour of the month going to Everton. If Rodon was English, then maybe he'd have an extra 10 million on that fee.
I don't think he's any worse than Ben Godfrey.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, again, obviously, Spurs fans, let us know your opinion. Do you want him? Do you not want him? I think he'd be a good signing. You know, worth a punt. You know, if you're going to spend 18 million on him, why not? In there. But yeah, that's the transfer news, I believe. Reece, anything else before we go tonight?
Nope.
No, superb. Okay, so everybody, don't forget to subscribe. If you've seen our Twitter, you'll know subscriber count has been flying up the whole time. Reece has been in the DMs talking to loads of different people as well. So we're coming up to 500 subs now. That'll be the next aim. But beyond that, it's 1,000, and then the world is ours. So don't forget to like and subscribe. As I say, we need the video to go into the algorithm. Very important. The more likes it gets, the more it gets seen by more and more people. So yeah, please don't forget to like as well. And yeah, add me and Reece up on the socials. You'll see our socials on the screen now. And yeah, add us up and interact with us. We always love to talk with people about football, and especially in the comments as well. So leave a comment below. And we will be back very shortly. We'll have another short turnaround before the next podcast. We'll have the latest news and views. So we'll see you then, people. Take care. Ciao.